Shane Silsby here for another episode of the Public Works Podcast in downtown Phoenix at the AZ Water Annual Conference. But this is an episode with a special guest, Nazario Prieto, a colleague of mine from the city of Phoenix. He does a great job in this episode talking about all things water and wastewater and regional water policy, all of those things. So be sure to tune in. I know that you will enjoy this episode. To help us with our outreach to advance the public works profession, please like this episode, share it with a friend, subscribe to the YouTube channel, support us on LinkedIn to help get the message out there. Enjoy this episode with Nazario Prieto, Assistant Water Director with the City of Phoenix. Thanks. All right. Good morning, Shane Silsby here with a special episode of the Public Works Podcast from the AZ Water Conference in downtown Phoenix. Here with a very special guest, Nazario Prieto with the City of Phoenix. And I'm excited to talk to him today because we have known each other, we were just saying, for at least 20 years.
About 20 years.
20 to 21 years. It's been fun. You've been at Phoenix the whole time, generally speaking, since I knew you. I moved on to do other things, but I'm happy to be back here chatting with you today. So welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you, Shane. It's great being here today, and it's awesome to see you again. Like you said, we've known each other for a long time, back when we were both in development services, starting off our young careers at the City of Phoenix and in engineering.
Yeah, that was an interesting time. It was during the pre-recession, so it was the boom, industry boom, right? And so the Valley, like many other areas, I think Las Vegas, Atlanta, and Phoenix were leading the nation in permit issuance numbers, and we were in the middle of that trying to entitle and approve all those permits for development in Phoenix.
Absolutely. It was crazy times.
Yeah, crazy
and then the
times.
recession hit.
Yeah, it's like the good old days at this point.
Yeah.
So you had some time before that, but if you wouldn't mind just talking to us a little bit about your journey,
Sure.
Your career, how you got into engineering, how you thought that might be interesting to you, and then how you ended up in your current role today.
Thank you for asking. I grew up in a small town in Mexico, in Chihuahua, Mexico. My dad's a rancher and farmer. I grew up going to the ranch, going to the farm all the time. My dad made it known that he did not want me having that life, even though he loved it. He wanted more. He wanted more for me. So he always said I needed to go to school. In terms of engineering, one of the things that we dealt with in Mexico was water scarcity and water quality issues. My mom used to boil water for us every day. We weren't supposed to drink it out of the tap. As a young kid, right, you go out, play basketball, play sports, you drink out of the hose. So I grew up with things that Americans would never experience. I had amoebas, I had typhoid fever once, I had diseases that I just thought it was part of growing up in Mexico. Wow. It wasn't until I went to school in El Paso that I realized that's not normal, right? A water system is supposed to be safe and reliable. And that's what I experienced in El Paso. So I think that planted the seed for me to want to become an engineer. So I went to UTEP, I became a civil engineer there. And then I was exposed to a professor who, as part of our senior project, had me work at a water treatment plant. Oh, and that really gave me kind of that background and exposure to water treatment. And from that point on, I just started loving water. My first job out of college was with the Metropolitan Water District, where I was their demands forecaster. So I was a junior engineer there for about 3 years. And I worked on short-term demand forecasting. So I worked with the 26 member agencies, trying to develop these 0 to 3 year forecasts to try to figure out, to determine how are we going to get water to all these agencies. So I spent 3 years there. And then that eventually led me to a job in Phoenix where I met you doing plan review. And then there was an opportunity to move into the water department, which is where I knew I'd always end up. And now I've been there close to 20 years. I've kind of grown up in the water department. I spent a lot of time doing private development work, and then I've also worked on many other things. But in this current role that I have today, I've been in this position as an assistant water services director for 6 years, and I oversee the wastewater utility. I have the privilege of overseeing one of the nation's largest wastewater utilities. We were responsible for a 540 square mile service area, over 5,000 miles of sewer mains, 30 lift stations, odor control stations, and 3 wastewater treatment plants. So it's pretty incredible. I'm very blessed to be here and just excited to be working for the City of Phoenix and to be able to help our community and be a part of such a great team.
That's interesting. Phoenix is at the hub of some of the water policy and initiative challenges in the whole Southwest because you have more capacity and sophistication maybe than other cities just because of the size. But your career is interesting because if people don't know, the Metropolitan Water District is a huge agency. I don't know if it's the largest in the country or second largest for water supply, but that's huge. And that city of Phoenix, just because of its population, is the fifth largest city in the country. That's big. So you're able to do some great things in your career to this point. But you talked about, even back to your childhood, wanting to think about water availability and water quality. And I wondered if you wanted to talk about the city's initiative for advanced water purification.
Absolutely.
And how that plays into all those things.
Absolutely. I think one of the programs that we have now, which we've branded it as Pure Water Phoenix. So it's taking wastewater all the way to potable. We talk about reuse, and some states are talking about doing reuse now. And the reality is that Arizona's been taking wastewater and turning it into recycled water or reuse water for decades. We've been doing this for a very long time. So our wastewater treatment plants treat this water to a very high degree that meet the Clean Water Act requirements. So in order to put it into the environment, we've already done a fantastic job at our treatment plants to ensure that it's safe for the environment, that it's safe for reuse. Half of our water that we treat at one of our treatment plants is used for power production or energy production at the Palo Verde nuclear plant. So we've already been doing this for a very long time. We're taking about 97% of our wastewater and turning it into reuse water and putting it towards a beneficial use. However, we haven't quite gotten to the point where we can take that and turn it into drinking water. And that is what Pure Water is. So that is our very aggressive and ambitious program to take the wastewater, the treated wastewater, whatever's not committed to the nuclear plant or other commitments that we have, and turn that into potable water so that we can increase our water resource portfolio and provide additional supplies to our potable water customers, especially in light of what's going on with the Colorado River.
Do you want to talk about that just briefly? We had one of your colleagues, Catherine Sorensen, on one of our shows. Go back and check that out, where she talked about water policy and water rights in the Southwest. But do you want to just briefly touch on Phoenix's role in that?
One of the things that's really interesting, and I know you and I talked a little bit about the recession and what was happening back then. One of the things that Phoenix did back in the early 2000s, and it started with planning in the 1990s, was to build a water reclamation plant up north. And it's catty corner from our Union Hill surface water treatment plant. The thought back then, the foresight that our previous leaders had, was that ultimately would be Phoenix's first advanced purified water facility, that even back then. And the crazy part about that is it was illegal. It was prohibited in the state of Arizona to do DPR. We could do indirect potable reuse, but not direct. So it wasn't until 2018 that the state removed the ban and allowed us to then move forward with advanced water purification. But they didn't develop the guidelines. So in 2018, they basically said it's no longer prohibited. But at that point, because one of the things that happened during the recession, we built this plant with the expectation that the growth was exploding. Right? The growth in the north part of Phoenix was just exploding. It was booming. We were going to need additional wastewater treatment. So we thought, let's build this plant. We turned it on in the year 2000. And unfortunately, because of the recession, we had to mothball it in 2009, which meant that all those flows that were coming to the plant were then bypassed and sent to our 91st Avenue wastewater treatment plant. But even in doing so, we still knew that at some point in the future, we'd need to bring that plant back online, either for sewer conveyance capacity issues or because advanced water purification was a possibility. Around 2015-16 timeframe, we did a mega sewer metering project that showed us that a lot of our conveyance systems were over capacity or getting to the point where we wouldn't have capacity in some segments. So at that point in time, we decided, hey, it's time to bring back Cave Creek. As part of that design, we also incorporated what we felt were technologies and treatments that would be needed to move it towards advanced water purification. Even though we didn't know what the rules were going to be, we took our best educated guesses, looking at what California had done, and came up with a treatment train that we felt would allow us to go advanced purified water. What ended up happening over the next few years, in the last couple of years, the state of Arizona developed the guidelines, and it turned out that a lot of the decisions that we made were really good decisions, and we only have to make a few additional tweaks to get us all the way to advanced water purification. You asked what was Phoenix's role. Phoenix's role was really big in terms of developing the rules. We've been working with the state from the very beginning on workshops, stakeholder groups, to try to help either guide, provide feedback, explain how some of the rules that they were talking about would impact municipalities like ours. And at the end of the day, I think we came up together with a very collaborative approach. It's not exactly everything Phoenix wanted, but it's something that's really good for the state. So I think Phoenix's role was instrumental in not only getting the guidelines done, but to remove the prohibition from the state law.
That's interesting. And as one of the largest cities in the country, if it works here, then it's replicatable, obviously, throughout the state and
Absolutely.
beyond. You mentioned some tweaks, and you were probably being modest about that because a lot of that has to do with technology. And over your career, you may have seen, especially in wastewater, where we have all the engineering disciplines, right? You got the structure, the building, you've got the civil to design it, you've got electrical to run it, you always had mechanical, and now you have chemical. So you have all the elements in a wastewater treatment plant. Do you want to talk a little bit about how the industry's advanced with that technology, maybe with automation? You have to be very careful. This is a public health issue.
Absolutely.
And how AI might be integrated into that.
The interesting things about the advanced water treatment facilities is the rules require monitoring across every process. So something that's slightly different from other treatment plants, we need to test the water before it enters a process and test it after and make sure that it's doing what it's supposed to do. That technology is doing what it's supposed to do. And if it isn't, we need to have flags, we need to have measures to either divert flow. At the end of the day, our advanced water purification facilities are going to be the most sophisticated plants that we will have, and it'll allow us to produce the purest water in Phoenix, Arizona. All our other treatment plants, the water is completely safe. They meet and exceed the Safe Drinking Water Quality Act requirements, but these go above and beyond that because of the additional rules that are in place, because of where the source water comes from. So AI is going to play a huge part in all of this because there's going to be so much data that we're going to need systems to help us not only monitor the data, but be able to use that data to make real-time decisions. In operating the facilities, it's going to be instrumental. And we're seeing that already. I can talk a little bit about what we've done on the wastewater side if you're interested, but we're using AI to help us assess our sewer lines much better than we did years ago. We've partnered with Sewer AI. It's taking us from an assessment cycle of 15 to 19 years down to like 5 to 7 years. So I think that'll be instrumental in the industry. And there are many more examples like that we can use. But when it comes to advanced water purification, there's just going to be so much monitoring and so much data that I believe we're going to need AI to help us.
So on existing systems, you might be looking at predictive modeling through AI to look at where breaks might occur or weaknesses. Mm-hmm. And then in the plants, you're talking about so much data that's going to be a state requirement potentially to monitor that you want to see those trends as quickly as you can.
Absolutely.
To make decisions.
You can also use that technology to predict because it'll have a historical view of the plant. And when you had this come down the sewer, this is what happened last time. We're seeing something come through now. You might want to adjust your chemicals. You might want to do things slightly different. So I think it's going to be a big part of our operations as we move forward. But as a city, we need to do that in a very responsible way, right? We don't have excess money. We want to make sure that our ratepayers are getting true value for any product that we use. So we're starting to implement ways of piloting technology so we don't have to spend a lot of money to ensure that once we go with a technology, we vetted it out and we pick the right one. So those are things that we're developing now to try to make sure that we pick the right technologies. Because to be honest, there are so many technologies out there that are just really cool. But are they absolutely necessary? Sometimes they're not.
Yeah, interesting. And we're at a conference, so you might hear some background noise. But we say it's important, and just on the surface, people should understand the importance of water. But from a statistics standpoint, or some stats, always like that, how much water does the city of Phoenix put out to serve its population every day, roughly?
We produce on average about 250 million gallons per day. Per day. Okay. That's on average throughout our 5 surface water treatment plants. So if you look at it across the board, we produced, I think last year it was 110 billion gallons of water per year. And on the wastewater side, we treat about and create about 60 to 70 billion gallons of reuse water.
So great stat there, and not every city is going to have that volume, but the point is 250 million gallons per day. If you don't have any reuse plan, every day that water is used and gone.
Correct.
Basically, right? It's flushed, does whatever, right? But now if you can access that,
Absolutely.
if you're able to capture one day's worth of reuse, right? Just think about that over the whole course of a year or a decade.
It's huge.
For the stats.
No, it's huge. And our Pure Water Phoenix program, right now we're looking at the Cave Creek plant, which will produce about 6 to 7 million gallons per day at completion. And then we're also trying to replicate a facility of similar size on the west side of that northern part of Phoenix that would also do about 7 to 8 million gallons per day. But then the hope is that eventually we can take what we've learned at those two facilities and build something much larger in the south, whether it's at 91st Avenue Wastewater Treatment Plant. We also have a 23rd Avenue Wastewater Treatment Plant that takes flows primarily from the downtown Phoenix area, where we could also take some of that and turn it into advanced purified water. But when you look at the kind of the 10-year picture of what this Pure Water program looks like, we're talking about producing about 50 million gallons per day of essentially new water.
That's great. And to do that through the construction of new facilities or the rehabilitation of old or maintaining your existing network, you need people to do
Absolutely.
that. So would you mind sharing your perspective on workforce from the standpoint of trying to bring people into the industry or into the city, working with people you have today, or maybe partnering with the private sector to cover all of these resource needs?
Yeah, I think a few years ago, we were really struggling to hire operators, to hire people into the industry. Thanks to the leadership of our council and our city manager, they did a compensation study that really helped us out, at least in those entry-level positions. It's put us in a much better place where we don't have the vacancies that we used to have. And one of the things that Phoenix has done is we've developed apprenticeship programs or trainee programs. So our operators come in without knowing, they don't have to know anything about water or wastewater treatment. We put them in this trainee program, and over a period of about 4 years, we develop them into senior utility operators, which are just so critical to operating our facilities. We felt that by creating that program, it allows more people to come into the industry. A lot of times people were like, I don't know anything about water treatment. I don't know anything about wastewater treatment. It's okay. We just want good people that show up to work every day and want to learn. We will teach you, we will invest in you, and we will build you up so that you can have a long and sustainable career with the city of Phoenix. As we navigate through the AWP requirements for operators, there's some challenges there. We're going to possibly have to create new classifications because the requirements are a little bit more stringent for being an operator at an advanced water purification facility. You have to have a grade 4 in water, you have to have a grade 4 in wastewater, but I think there's an opportunity here to expose both the water and the wastewater side to what they do, something we haven't done very well as an industry, and we haven't really needed to. I think that's something that's going to be really important, and we're having those conversations on how do we rotate people so that they can gain experience on both sides, and then they can be better prepared to run some of these advanced water purification facilities. So a few years ago, it was going to be very challenging. Today, it's gotten better. And then I also think that technology will play a part in operating some of these facilities because there's just going to be way too many instruments, there's way too much analysis, too much laboratory requirements that I think it's going to have to be a part of it. So INCs, instrumentation and control specialists, are going to be key, electricians, mechanics. We're going to need more and more of those types of people. I highly recommend those of you that are listening, if you're interested in a career in the water industry, don't just think that you have to be an engineer. You can come in and become an operator, maintain our pipelines, maintain our lift stations, our force mains. We have so many different jobs. Just in the water services department and here in Phoenix, we have over 1,500 employees in many different types of jobs.
There you go. So we talked about AI earlier, workforce, the cross-section. A lot of people might be worried about AI's impact on the job market and the workforce, but you're talking about positions that are really needed hands-on,
Absolutely.
working with AI potentially over their career as they train. So think about the city of Phoenix and the water industry. We're always going to need water, and we need good people that can get trained up through your program.
Absolutely. And to be honest, AI on the wastewater side, when I mentioned our partnership with Sewer AI, we're not changing the amount of people that we have out there inspecting and assessing sewer lines. We're actually just doing more thanks to the partnership with AI. Now we're actually keeping up with the cleaning cycle, where before we were so far behind, and now we're starting to catch up.
Interesting, and some folks might not know, but for a growth city like Phoenix, you continue to add infrastructure every year with growth, but you don't always add a proportional number of employees. So AI allows you to have some efficiencies there, maybe get ahead of a few things.
Absolutely.
It's always going to be a need for folks in that industry.
Yep. And it also shows our ratepayers and our elected officials that, I know it's a cliche, we're trying to do more with less, but that's the reality. As you mentioned, it's really hard to add staff, but if we could add technology to help us do what we do better and more efficiently, it ends up benefiting everyone, even our ratepayers, because we have less rate increases or smaller rate increases because we didn't grow our staff too much. We're using technology to help us do our job better.
Yeah. And I think for the millennial, the newer generations, perhaps this is a target they could consider, because as people retire, maybe not as proficient in technology or AI or whatever the case may be, but proficient in other things, the new generations come in, might be able to be more adaptive. That's the whole messaging from millennials, is they're adaptive. So perhaps that's a good fit for what you need from a technology standpoint right now.
Absolutely, absolutely. Some of the things that are interesting are our collection crews that are out there televising our sewer lines. They're using like game remotes, right?
Yeah.
So you got a lot of kids that like to game. You could control a robot that goes in with a camera that goes into our sewers. As you start operating facilities, you're going to be looking at screens that are similar to some of the gaming stuff that you see, SimCity. I see my kids play with that stuff, where they're building cities on gaming systems and wastewater treatment plants and water treatment plants. And it's just interesting to see how some of the things that they're doing for fun can actually help our industry in the future.
Yeah, that's great. So sign up, get involved. Okay, so you need people, but you also need revenues to run water systems and wastewater systems.
We do.
I don't know if people are aware, but to have infrastructure, you need money to do that. So we get into taxation a lot. People don't like that, but water systems have fees. People don't really like fees, but they want to be able to turn on that tap and have instantly great quality water, or flush the toilet and have that take care of itself. So you just want to talk about the whole revenue side of the systems?
Yeah, the revenue side is challenging, right? Because as everything keeps going up, and as we mentioned, sometimes we can't add staff because of increased revenue needs, but our chemical costs, our electricity costs, our raw water costs, everything goes up. So we're constantly needing to pivot and adjust and sometimes defer projects because you've got to pay for these other things. The reality is that Phoenix is generally pretty young as a city. So our infrastructure isn't as old as some of the larger, older cities, New York and Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, and some of those cities, their infrastructure is a lot older than ours. I think our customer base in some ways has been spoiled with the low cost of water, but ultimately our infrastructure will age and we will need to invest more and more into it and to repair it and rehab and replace it. And that's just for the infrastructure side. On top of that, we have some major challenges with our water resources. We need to not only go out and try to purchase more water and get more water resources from the river, from other places, but we need to invest in programs such as our Pure Water program, which is an extremely aggressive and expensive program. We're talking in the billions of dollars now, right? We used to talk about millions, now we're talking about billions of dollars. But when people ask, well, why is it so expensive and is it worth the cost? We have to think about what is the cost of not having water, right? Yeah. What is that cost? I think UCLA did a study of that. There's a few things where they've taken a look at what the economic impact is of not having enough water. And we in Phoenix, we want to ensure that never happens, that we have water for today, tomorrow, and for future generations.
Yeah, the Colorado River system is overtaxed, right?
Yep.
You mentioned people getting used to low fees for water in a desert, right? So think about those two things working back and forth. So what's the cost of something? Well, you know the true cost once you don't have it, as you said. But I think that's important for people to understand that in their lives, the cost of everything goes up every year, usually. Milk, gas, whatever it is. but people sometimes don't think that the cost for government services should ever go up. And so that's an interesting dynamic where the private sector can just raise the price of coffee and people go, well, that's is what it is. But on the public sector, you raise it 1% and people are like, well, you're not doing what you need to do or not being efficient or whatever. Many well-intentioned people in government agencies trying to do the best they can, but at some point you're up against inflation, cost, whatever it is, consumer price index adjustments. Important.
Absolutely, absolutely important. But to be completely fair to our customers, I think they understand the value of water and they know what it's like to live in the desert. Because if you look historically, Phoenix has added 500,000 people since the 1990s, but our water production has remained relatively flat. Our GPCD for residential has gone from about 140 gallons per capita per day down to about 95 gallons per capita per day. Because of that, we've been able to continue to grow responsibly, and we haven't had to do major expansions in any of our treatment plants. So that's been a testament to our residents and their understanding that we live in a desert and we need to value water. Unfortunately, because of the looming cuts on the Colorado River, Phoenix may need to go out and ask our customers to even conserve more in the future. And that's probably coming in the next few years.
Yeah, and it's probably a combination of both. More conservation, more efficiency, and more supply if you can figure that out.
Absolutely.
So Phoenix, a big player, obviously in the Southwest, but in the nation as the 5th largest city in the country. Anything else you want to mention about the water resources in general? Any other strategies or initiatives as we wrap up here today? There's just so much going on, we can't fit it in.
There is. So when we talk about Phoenix and how we supply our current customer base today, about close to 58% of our current demand is met through salt and Verde River water, so the Salt River Project water. Close to 40% is met from Colorado River water today. About 2% is groundwater, and that's only because we need to turn on our wells once in a while, but we're really not using groundwater. Groundwater supplies, we see it as a resource of last resort, right? We don't want to touch it until we have to touch it. And that's in our short-term plan to address some of the cuts that are looming on the Colorado. That in addition to pure water and creating that new water for Phoenix, we're also working with SRP and the partners to expand Bartlett Lake. So that's going to be huge as well, but that's probably 10 to 15 years out, where it would create additional water that we could use anywhere in our system. So if you're familiar with on-project versus off-project, right? On-project water are those lands that were originally farmed that kind of they mortgaged their land to build Roosevelt Lake. Legally, the water that was held back by Roosevelt Lake and those upstream dams can only be used on those lands. So even if you have excess water, you're not supposed to use it anywhere else. It's only there. However, Phoenix invested in raising Roosevelt and doing some other projects to increase capacity at some other dams that created additional water resources for us in the past that allow us now to move that water north to areas where we might need more supplies. Bartlett Dam expansion creates more of that type of water that we can use anywhere. For instance, Ahwatukee is not on project. We use other waters to serve Ahwatukee. Technically, it's all salt and Verde River water, the molecules, but on paper, it's some of that other water that can be used anywhere in our system. So that becomes really valuable to us because we can use it anywhere. And some people might say, well, those customers on Colorado are the ones that need the water. Why do we have to all pay for this infrastructure? The reality is that the salt and the Verde rivers may also have issues in the future, and it's one system. So the city of Phoenix is all one water system, and we all help support the entire system. We think it's important that people understand that, because right now it might be Colorado River water, but later it might be salt and Verde River. And just to give an example of that, SRP hasn't had a great year in terms of snowpack in the mountains that feed in the watershed that feed the Salt River Project water. So they've been pumping a lot of groundwater to make up for that difference.
Okay, well, that's great. Maybe the last thing for you, if you want to just talk real quick about Phoenix's regional partnership with the SROG, how that works,
Sure.
Just so people understand. Phoenix is taking care of its city jurisdictional areas, but it also works regionally.
Absolutely. So Phoenix has a partnership with what we refer to as SROG, which is a sub-regional operating group, which is made up of 5 valley cities: Phoenix, Mesa, Tempe, Scottsdale, and Glendale. These 5 cities have ownership of the largest wastewater treatment plant in the Southwest, our 91st Avenue wastewater treatment plant. So that treatment plant is an end-of-the-line facility that is operated by the city of Phoenix exclusively, but it's owned by the 5 cities. Phoenix owns about 55% capacity of that plant, and we receive flows from the 5 cities to the tune of about 2.7 million customers in the valley. So residents discharge their wastewater flow, it comes to this treatment plant, and we average about 150 million gallons per day. And as I mentioned earlier, approximately half of that is then pumped and sent to the nuclear plant for cooling water purposes. So a lot of the energy that is created in the state of Arizona, some of it stays here, some of it is sold in California, but it's only because of the agreement that they have with the SROG partners. So if it wasn't for the water they received from the SROG partnership, that nuclear plant wouldn't exist. It's still my understanding that it is the only nuclear plant in the world that is not adjacent to a large body of water because of the water it receives from us. So we have a wonderful partnership with them. When we talk about building an advanced water purification facility at 91st Avenue, we've been talking to many of the water providers in the area to try to see if there's regional collaboration. We've developed pure water branding that includes the state flag that allows anybody in the state of Arizona to use that branding. We're happy to share it with anybody. Tucson Water has moved on and is using it. Scottsdale Water potentially, if they move forward with that. There's other cities that are talking about using it. So our approach is, what can we do in Phoenix that could help the entire state? And if we can collaborate on a regional facility at 91st to help provide more water resources to more than just Phoenix, we're all in. I know it's complicated, these partnerships like the SROG partnership. It's a great partnership. We have great relationships with all our partners, but sometimes it gets a little challenging because it's like having to go to 5 councils to get approval of a project, right? It's a little bit more bureaucratic, but we've figured out ways to deal with it and to work really well with our partners.
That's great. Well, you can see Phoenix as being a leader, obviously in the metro area, but also regionally and statewide. And Nazario's being a great leader for the city in doing that. So we appreciate you being on the show today,
Thank you, Shane.
Nazario.
My pleasure.
He's the best. We could talk to him for hours, but he's a busy guy. So we want to say thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Public Works Podcast. You can check out stuff going on at Phoenix. Just go to their website, check out the Water Services Department, check out their Pure Water Initiative. A lot going on here in the Valley of the Sun. Thank you for tuning in today.
Thank you. Just don't talk about the Cowboys.
Don't talk about the Cowboys. We talk about the Cardinals.
That's right.
All right, thanks. Okay, that was our show with Nazario Prieto from the city of Phoenix. He's the Assistant Water Services Director and is doing a great job in everything going on in water in Phoenix, along with his colleagues in the department and with the support of the City Council and the Mayor. So you can see that Phoenix is being a regional leader, a state leader, and potentially a national leader as we look at what's happening in the water sector, especially with what's happening on the Colorado River and Phoenix's impact on that from a positive perspective, trying to figure out other ways to manage that resource and maximize the use of that resource for years to come. So thank you again to Nazario for stopping by the show, and thank you all for watching this very special episode of the Public Works Podcast, live on location in downtown Phoenix. I'm headed to the exhibit hall. Thanks a lot.
All right. Here we are.
Joseph here, Public Works Podcast.
Shane here as well.
All right, so you just watched some cool content. All we need from you is to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. It helps us get the message out. It helps us propagate the gospel of Public Works. So if you have free time, which you probably have 2 or 3 seconds, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button so more people can follow us.
That's right. All we're trying to do is highlight the public works industry.
That's it.
Make those professionals trying to improve your communities look good and raise awareness and credibility of public works.
Yes.
It's easy to do.
Once again, thanks for watching. If you have any content ideas, if you have any questions, please put them in the comments, and Shane or I will answer them within a week of you putting it in there, and we'll get you the answer that you need.
Thank you very much.